The stars had always watched humanity, but humanity had never known that something among those stars was watching back, waiting, counting the years like a farmer counts the seasons before harvest. Admiral Veltorak stood on the command bridge of the Eternal Dominion, the largest warship the Zythrani Collective had ever built. His 4 eyes gazed through the observation window at the small blue planet growing larger in the distance. Earth, the seeding world, the place where his ancestors had planted human life 6,000 years ago. He remembered the old records. The ancient videos showed primitive creatures with soft skin and weak bodies. They lived in caves. They feared fire. They worshipped the Zythrani ships as gods when they descended from the sky. The humans had screamed and run when the collectors took samples for testing. They had been perfect. Weak. Afraid. Delicious. Admiral, said his second-in-command, a younger Zythrani named Kethra. We are approaching sensor range of the 3rd planet. Veltorak made a sound of satisfaction. The journey had taken 300 years in fold space, but time meant nothing to the collective. They were patient. They had seeded thousands of worlds across the galaxy. They planted primitive species, let them grow and multiply for a few thousand years, and then returned to harvest them. It was efficient. It was clean. It was the way things had always been done. Begin long-range scans. Veltorak ordered. I want to see how many of our livestock are ready for collection. The scanning officer, an old Zythrani with faded scales, activated the sensors. The bridge fell silent as data began flowing across the screens. Then the scanning officer made a strange sound. It was not a sound Veltorak had ever heard before. It was the sound of confusion mixed with fear. Admiral, the officer said, his voice shaking. There is an error in the sensors. There must be an error. Veltorak walked toward the scanning station. What kind of error? The readings show. The officer stopped. He checked the data again. He ran the scan a second time. A third time. His 4 eyes grew wide. Admiral, the readings show massive structures in orbit around the 3rd planet. Artificial structures, defense platforms. And there are ships. Thousands of ships. Veltorak felt his blood grow cold. That is impossible. Run the scan again. I have run it 7 times, Admiral. The results are the same. The officer turned to face his commander. There are also energy signatures consistent with fold space technology. The humans have faster than light travel. The bridge fell into complete silence. Every officer stopped what they were doing. Every eye turned toward the Admiral. In 50,000 years of collective history, this had never happened. A seeded species had never developed technology. They were chosen specifically because they could not. They were weak. They were primitive. They were food. Show me, Veltorak commanded. The main screen flickered to life. It showed Earth, but not the Earth from the ancient records. This Earth was surrounded by a ring of metal and light. Massive stations floated in orbit, bristling with weapons that the computer could not identify. Ships moved between the stations, sleek, fast, dangerous-looking vessels that bore no resemblance to the collective's own designs. And beyond Earth, the scans showed something even more disturbing. Colony signatures, human life signs on other worlds. Dozens of worlds. Hundreds of worlds. How many? Veltorak asked, his voice barely a whisper. Over 200 confirmed colonies, Admiral, spread across multiple star systems. Total human population estimated at. The officer paused. 47 billion. Veltorak gripped the railing in front of him. His claws dug into the metal. This was wrong. This was all wrong. The humans should be living in mud huts. They should be fighting each other with sticks and stones. They should be easy prey. There must be an explanation, said Kethra. Perhaps another species interfered. Perhaps someone else developed them. No, Veltorak said. He was looking at the ship designs on the screen. They were unmistakably human. The proportions were designed for human bodies. The writing on the hulls used human symbols. They did this themselves. Somehow, they did this themselves. He straightened his posture. He was an admiral of the Zythrani Collective. He had conquered 12 species. He had harvested billions of creatures across 100 worlds. He would not be frightened by livestock, no matter how advanced they had become. It changes nothing, he declared. They are still humans. They are still the species we created. They belong to us, by right of seeding. We will simply need to adjust our approach. Admiral, the communications officer spoke up. We are being scanned. The humans have detected our presence. Let them scan. Let them see the might of the collective. Veltorak turned to face his crew. Open a channel. All frequencies. I will deliver the declaration of harvest myself. The communications officer worked quickly. Within moments, a light indicated that the channel was open. Veltorak stepped forward, composing himself. He had delivered this speech many times to many species. It was tradition. It was ceremony. It was a reminder to the prey that they had no hope. Attention, creatures of Earth, he began, his voice deep and commanding. I am Admiral Veltorak of the Zithrani Collective. 6,000 of your years ago, our ancestors came to your world. They planted the seeds of your species. They gave you life. They made you what you are. Now, the time of harvest has come. You exist because we allowed you to exist. You grew because we designed you to grow. And now, you will serve the purpose for which you were created. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is simply the natural order of things. You have one planetary rotation to surrender your world and prepare for collection. Resistance is not advised. Resistance will only increase your suffering. The collective thanks you for your service. He made a gesture, and the communications officer closed the channel. Veltorak allowed himself a small smile. The speech always worked. Every species responded the same way, with panic, with terror, with desperate pleas for mercy. Some tried to fight, of course. They always failed. The collective was too powerful. The collective was eternal. Admiral, the communications officer said, we are receiving a response. Already? Veltorak was surprised. Most species took hours to organize a reply. Show me. The main screen changed. A human face appeared. It belonged to a female with dark skin and gray hair. She wore a uniform of some kind, covered in symbols and decorations. Her eyes were calm. Her expression was bored. This is Secretary General Amaro Okonkwo of the United Terran Council, the human said. We have received your transmission. We have discussed it among ourselves. Our response is as follows. Veltorak leaned forward, expecting tears, expecting begging, expecting the sweet fear that always came before the harvest. We've been waiting for you, the human said. 6,000 years is a long time. We almost thought you'd forgotten about us. But we never forgot about you. We never forgot what you did to our ancestors. We never forgot the fear you left in our blood. She paused. Your move. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Veltorak stood frozen, trying to process what he had just witnessed. No fear. No panic. No submission. The human had looked at him like he was an inconvenience, like he was a minor problem to be dealt with. Admiral? Kethra asked carefully. What are your orders? Veltorak did not answer immediately. He was thinking. He was remembering something from the ancient records, something that had been flagged but largely ignored. A note from the original seeding team, written 6,000 years ago. He walked to a data terminal and pulled up the file. The words appeared on screen, written in the old Zithrani script. Species demonstrates unusual aggression. Recommend accelerated harvest timeline. They fight even when defeated. They resist even when resistance is pointless. They do not behave like normal prey. Suggest caution in future dealings. The note had been dismissed at the time. The collective had conquered thousands of species. They had never met one they could not break. The warning had seemed unnecessary. Now, looking at the human defense platforms and the human warships and the 200 human colonies spread across the stars, Veltorak wondered if his ancestors had made a terrible mistake. Admiral? Kethra asked again. Veltorak closed the file. He pushed the doubt from his mind. It did not matter how advanced the humans had become. It did not matter how unafraid they seemed. The collective had 4,000 warships in this fleet alone. They had weapons that could crack planets in half. They had 50,000 years of military experience. The humans had 6,000 years. It was nothing. They were still prey. They would always be prey. Launch the fighter squadrons, Veltorak ordered. Begin attack formation. We will show these creatures what happens to livestock that forgets its place. As his officers rushed to obey, Veltorak looked once more at the blue planet on the screen. Something about the human's calm expression bothered him. Something about the way she had said your move felt wrong. It was almost as if she knew something he did not. Far below, on the surface of Earth, Secretary General Amara Okonkwo turned away from the communication console. Around her stood the 12 members of the United Terran Council, the leaders of humanity's greatest nations and colonies. They had all watched the Zithrani transmission. They had all seen the alien admiral's arrogant face. "Well," said the representative from the Mars Collective, "that was dramatic. They certainly think highly of themselves," said the ambassador from the outer colonies. Amara walked to a large window that overlooked the city of New Geneva. Millions of people lived their lives below, going about their business, unaware that an alien invasion fleet had just arrived in their solar system. They would be informed soon enough. But Amara knew there would be no panic. Humanity had been preparing for this day for a very long time. "Begin protocol homecoming," she ordered. "Activate all orbital defense platforms. Move the 1st through 5th fleets to intercept positions. And someone contact Admiral Chen. Tell him his moment has finally arrived." "Madam Secretary," said the representative from the African Union, "should we attempt negotiation first? Perhaps we can avoid unnecessary bloodshed." Amara turned to face him. Her eyes were hard. "There will be no negotiation. There will be no diplomacy. For 6,000 years, we have lived with the memory of what they did to us. Every culture on Earth has stories of people taken from their homes, of lights in the sky, of monsters that came in the night. We built religions around our fear of them. We passed that fear down through generations. And when we finally reached the stars and found the ruins of the species they harvested before us." She paused. "No. There will be no negotiation. There will only be war." The council members nodded. They had all seen the ruins. They had all walked through the empty cities of dead civilizations. They had all read the records left behind by species who had begged for mercy and received none. The Zithrani did not negotiate. The Zithrani did not show mercy. The Zithrani took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. So humanity would do the same. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in bunkers that had been built centuries ago, military commanders received their orders. Across the solar system, ships that had been hiding in the asteroid belt and in the shadow of Jupiter's moons began to power up their engines. On Mars and Venus and the moons of Saturn, soldiers put on their armor and checked their weapons. Humanity had not been idle during those 6,000 years. They had grown. They had learned. They had built. And most importantly, they had remembered. Every human child learned the history. Every human adult knew the truth. They were not alone in the universe. They had never been alone. And someday, the things that had created them would return to claim their property. That day had finally come. Admiral Chenwei stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Unconquered, watching the Zithrani fleet on his tactical display. 4,000 ships. It was an impressive number, the largest alien fleet humanity had ever encountered. It was not enough. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his tactical officer announced. Chen nodded. He was an old man now, with white hair and weathered skin. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. His father had prepared before him. His grandfather before that. Generation after generation of the Chen family had served in the Terran Defense Force, all of them knowing that someday, the harvesters would return. "Signal all fleet commanders," Chen ordered. "Operation Long Memory is now active. Engage at will." Across the solar system, human ships began to move. They emerged from behind planets and moons, from asteroid fields and orbital stations. They moved with perfect coordination, the result of centuries of planning and practice. The Zithrani had come to harvest livestock. They were about to discover that the livestock had become something else entirely. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Veltorak watched his tactical display with growing confusion. The human ships were not fleeing. They were not forming defensive positions. They were attacking. They were actually attacking. "Admiral," Kethra said, his voice uncertain, "the humans are advancing on our position. All of them. They show no signs of fear or hesitation." Veltorak shook his head. It made no sense. The collective's ships were larger. The collective's weapons were more powerful. Any rational species would recognize the hopelessness of their situation and surrender. But the humans were not surrendering. The humans were charging straight at the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, and they were doing it with what appeared to be enthusiasm. "Let them come," Veltorak said, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "They will learn the price of defiance." As the first weapons fired and the first ships began to burn, Admiral Veltorak of the Zithrani Collective got his first real lesson in what humanity had become. It would not be his last. And in the silence of space, as battle raged and fire bloomed between the stars, the ancient contest between predator and prey began again. But this time, the roles were not so clear. This time, the prey had teeth, and they had been sharpening them for 6,000 years. The first battle lasted exactly 9 minutes and 47 seconds. In that time, Admiral Veltarak learned more about humanity than his species had learned in 6,000 years of observation. It began when 12 Zythrani warships broke away from the main fleet and moved toward a small human colony on the edge of the solar system. The colony was called Kepler 442b, a mining world with a population of 3 million. Veltarak had chosen it as the first target because it seemed weak. It was far from Earth. It had no major military presence. It would be an easy victory, a demonstration of collective power that would terrify the rest of humanity into submission. He was wrong about everything. The 12 warships were called harvesters. They were massive vessels, each one capable of carrying 100,000 captured creatures in its storage bays. They had glass-like surfaces and weapons that could burn continents to ash. In 50,000 years, no species had ever defeated a harvester in combat. Commander Zethral led the attack. He was young for his rank, eager to prove himself, confident in the superiority of his ships and his species. As his fleet approached Kepler 442b, he activated the communication system. Attention, human colony. You have been selected for harvest. Disable your defenses and prepare for collection. Non-compliance will result in immediate termination. He expected silence. He expected terror. He expected the usual scramble of panicked civilians trying to flee in whatever primitive vessels they had available. What he got was laughter. A human voice crackled over the communication system. It belonged to a male, and he sounded genuinely amused. Harvest? Buddy, do you have any idea where you are? This is Kepler 442b. The miners here are the toughest sons of guns in the outer colonies. Half of them are former military. The other half are criminals who were too mean for Earth's prisons. You just picked the worst possible target. Zethral felt irritation rising in his chest. Your threats are meaningless. We have 12 harvester-class warships. You have a mining colony. Yeah, the human said, and you've got about 30 seconds before you find out what that means. Good luck. The communication ended. Zethral turned to his tactical officer. What is the human military presence on this world? The officer checked his readings. Minimal, Commander. I detect only a few small patrol craft and... Wait. He paused. His 4 eyes widened. Commander, I am detecting multiple contacts emerging from the asteroid field. Dozens of contacts. They appear to be human warships. That is impossible. Our intelligence said this colony had no military presence. Our intelligence was 6,000 years old, Commander. Before Zethral could respond, the first human ships came into view. They were smaller than the harvesters, but they moved with incredible speed. Their designs were angular and aggressive, covered in weapons that the Zythrani sensors could not identify. And they were not alone. From hidden positions throughout the system, more ships appeared. They had been waiting. They had been hiding. They had known the Zythrani were coming, and they had prepared a trap. All ships, battle formation, Zethral shouted. Open fire. The Zythrani weapons activated. Beams of purple energy lanced across space, designed to disable and capture rather than destroy. The collective preferred their prey alive and undamaged. The human ships did not even try to dodge. They flew straight into the weapon fire, absorbing hits that should have disabled them. Their hulls glowed with energy, but they kept coming. Commander, our weapons are not effective. The human ships have some kind of adaptive shielding. Increase power, switch to lethal ordnance. The harvesters changed their attack. The purple beams became white-hot lances of destruction. Several human ships exploded, transformed into expanding clouds of metal and flame. But the humans did not retreat. They did not slow down. They kept charging forward, straight at the Zythrani fleet, and then they returned fire. The first Zythrani ship to die was the Blessed Harvest. A human missile struck its engine section, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship simply came apart. It did not explode in the conventional sense. It was torn to pieces by forces that the Zythrani could not understand. What kind of weapon was that? Zethral demanded. Unknown, Commander. Our systems cannot analyze it. The energy signature does not match anything in our database. A second harvester died. Then a third. The human ships were everywhere now, moving too fast to track, striking from angles that should have been impossible. They fought like predators, not prey. They fought like they enjoyed it. Zethral watched in horror as a human vessel smaller than any of his fighters flew directly at his command ship. It was damaged. Its engines were failing. Smoke poured from holes in its hull. Any rational pilot would have ejected or retreated. The human pilot did neither. He accelerated. "He is going to ram us," the tactical officer shouted. "Destroy that ship. Now." Every weapon on the command ship opened fire. The human vessel was torn apart by the barrage, pieces of it scattering across space. For a moment, Zethral felt relief. Then he saw the pilot. The human had ejected at the last second. He was floating in space, wearing some kind of armored suit, completely exposed to the vacuum and the weapons fire all around him. Any rational creature would have been paralyzed by fear. The human raised a weapon, some kind of handheld launcher, and fired it directly at the command ship's bridge. The explosion killed Zethral instantly. His last thought was a single word: impossible. Across the battlefield, the Zithrani fleet was dying. Of the 12 harvesters, only 3 remained operational. They turned to flee, their commanders finally understanding that this was not a harvest. This was a slaughter, but the humans did not let them go. The retreating ships were pursued by vessels that should not have been able to catch them. Human pilots pushed their engines beyond safe limits, burning out their drives in exchange for more speed. They crashed into Zithrani ships, detonating their own reactors to destroy their enemies. They were not fighting to win. They were fighting to annihilate. When the battle ended, 9 Zithrani harvesters were dead. Over 15,000 Zithrani soldiers had been killed. The remaining 3 ships limped away, carrying the survivors and a story that would shake the entire collective to its core. On the human side, the losses were significant. 47 ships destroyed, over 2,000 dead. But the miners of Kepler 442b were already celebrating. They had won, they had beaten the harvesters, and they had sent a message. Admiral Veltarak received the report on his command bridge. He read it 3 times, certain that there must be some mistake. 12 harvesters against a mining colony, and only 3 survived. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. "How?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How did this happen?" Kethra stood beside him, equally stunned. The humans fought with no regard for their own survival. Our tactical models assume that all species will retreat when losses reach a certain threshold. The humans did not retreat. They continued attacking until they were physically destroyed. That is not rational behavior. No, Admiral. It is not. But it is effective. Veltarak looked at the tactical display. The human fleet was still out there, circling the solar system like a pack of predators. They were not hiding. They were not defensive. They were hunting. For the first time in his long career, Veltarak felt something he had never felt before. It was cold. It was uncomfortable. It made his hearts beat faster and his scales tighten against his skin. He was afraid. "Contact the collective high command," he ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them the humans are not what we expected. Tell them." He paused, searching for the right words. "Tell them the livestock has learned to bite." On Earth, Secretary General Amara Okonkwo received the battle report with grim satisfaction. The victory at Kepler 442b had cost lives that could never be replaced. But it had also proven something important. The Zithrani could be beaten. "The enemy fleet is regrouping," reported Admiral Chen via holographic link. "They have pulled back to the outer system. Our scouts indicate they are requesting reinforcements from outside the solar system." "Let them call for help," Amara said. "Every ship they bring is another ship we can destroy." "How are our people reacting?" "With anger, Madam Secretary. The news of the battle has spread to every colony. Recruitment offices are overwhelmed. Weapons factories are running at full capacity. Everyone wants to fight." Amara nodded. This was what she had expected, what she had hoped for. For 6,000 years, humanity had carried fear in their bones, fear of the dark, fear of the sky, fear of things they could not explain. Now that fear had a face, now that fear had a name, and fear, properly channeled, became something else entirely. It became rage. "Continue defensive operations," she ordered. "Let them make the next move. But make sure they understand every step they take toward Earth will cost them dearly. In the depths of space, aboard a damaged harvester limping toward the safety of the main fleet, a young Zithrani officer named Talavex sat alone in his quarters. He had survived the Battle of Kepler 442b. He had watched his commander die. He had seen things that would haunt him for the rest of his life, but one image stayed with him more than any other. It was the face of a human pilot, visible for just a moment through the cockpit window of an attacking vessel. The human's ship was damaged beyond repair. His death was certain. Any rational creature would have been terrified, but the human was smiling, not a smile of madness or desperation, a smile of pure, genuine joy. He was happy. He was enjoying himself. He was about to die, and he was having the time of his life. Talvex did not understand. He could not understand. The Zithrani had conquered thousands of species across 50,000 years. They had seen every possible response to their harvest: terror, submission, desperate resistance, hopeless bargaining. Every species reacted the same way in the end. They broke. They gave up. They accepted their fate. Humans did not break. Humans did not give up. Humans flew their damaged ships into the heart of enemy fleets while laughing. Talvex pulled up the ancient records about Earth. He read everything his people had recorded about humanity, the original seeding reports, the observation logs from the early centuries, the warning from the first survey team. They fight, even when defeated. He had always thought it was an exaggeration, a bit of dramatic language from scientists who had never actually seen combat. Now he knew the truth. It was an understatement. Across the solar system, the first phase of the war was ending. The Zithrani had come expecting easy prey. They had found something else entirely. Something that fought back, something that refused to die quietly, something that made them feel, for the first time in 50,000 years, like they might not be the most dangerous things in the universe. In the council chambers on Earth, Amara Okonkwo stood before a window and watched the sun set over New Geneva. Somewhere out there, beyond the sky, an alien fleet was licking its wounds and calling for reinforcements. Somewhere out there, the creatures who had created humanity were learning that their creation had exceeded all expectations. 6,000 years, she said to herself. 6,000 years of waiting. 6,000 years of preparing. And now, finally, we get to show them what we've become. Behind her, the council was busy coordinating the war effort. Ships were being built. Soldiers were being trained. Weapons were being manufactured. The entire human species was mobilizing for a conflict they had been expecting since before recorded history. The Zithrani thought they were coming to collect livestock. They were wrong. The livestock had become something new, something dangerous, something that would not stop fighting until every last harvester was destroyed. And somewhere in the genetic memory of every human being, passed down through 6,000 years of fear and survival, a voice whispered the same message it had whispered since the beginning: never again. The Zithrani had declared war on humanity. They had expected easy victory. They had expected submission. They had expected the natural order of predator and prey. Instead, they had woken something that should have been left sleeping. Something that had waited 6,000 years for this exact moment. Something that was very, very angry. And it was just getting started. The second phase of the war was about to begin. The Zithrani would bring more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. They would throw everything they had at humanity, determined to prove that they were still the masters of the galaxy. They would learn. They would all learn. Humanity was no longer prey. Humanity was the hunter, and the hunt had only just begun. The War Council met in a chamber deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland, in a bunker that had been expanded and reinforced over the course of 3 centuries. The original structure dated back to the early atomic age, when humanity feared destroying itself. Now it served a different purpose. Now it was the heart of humanity's war effort against an enemy from the stars. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo stood at the front of the room, facing a wall of screens that showed tactical data from across the solar system and beyond. Around her sat the leaders of every major human faction: the Earth nations, the Mars Collective, the Outer Colonies, the Belt Federation, and the distant settlements on worlds with names that would have been science fiction just a few centuries ago. Before we discuss strategy, Amara began, I want to remind everyone why we are here. I want to remind you of what we are fighting for. General Thompson, if you would. An older man with a scarred face and cybernetic eyes stood and activated a holographic display. The room darkened, and images began to appear in the air above the conference table. "This is Proxima Centauri IV," General Thompson said. "The first extrasolar world we colonized. When we arrived 312 years ago, we found these." The image showed ruins. Massive structures of stone and metal, overgrown with alien vegetation but still recognizable as the remains of a city. Streets, buildings, what might have been homes and shops and temples, all of it empty, all of it silent. "We found organic remains," Thompson continued. "We analyzed them. The species that built this city was intelligent. They had developed agriculture, writing, mathematics. They had started to build machines. They were on the verge of an industrial revolution. Then, approximately 4,000 years before we arrived, something killed them. All of them. Every single member of their species, across their entire world. There were signs of resistance, weapons, fortifications, mass graves where they buried their fighters. But in the end, they lost. The image changed. Another world, another ruined city. This is Gliese 667c. Same story. A developing civilization. Signs of intelligent life. Then, sudden extinction. We found records this time. Carvings on stone walls, made by the last survivors. They showed ships coming from the sky. They showed creatures with 4 eyes and scaled skin. They showed their people being taken, loaded into those ships, and never seen again. The room was silent. Everyone knew this history. Everyone had learned it in school. But hearing it again, now, with the Zithrani fleet waiting just outside their solar system, gave the old story new weight. "We have found 47 worlds with similar evidence," Thompson said. 47 species that developed intelligence, developed civilization, and then were harvested by the Zithrani collective. Some of them left more records than others. Some of them managed to fight back for years before they were overwhelmed. But in the end, every single one of them was destroyed. The hologram changed again. This time it showed Earth. Not modern Earth, but ancient Earth, the coastlines different, the continents in slightly different positions. The view zoomed in on a specific location. The Fertile Crescent, the birthplace of human civilization. "And then there is us," Thompson said. "The only species seeded by the Zithrani that did not get harvested. The only species that survived long enough to reach the stars. The question that our ancestors asked. The question that drove every military decision we have made for the past 300 years. Was simple. Why? Why did they leave us alone? Why did they give us time to develop?" "Because they were patient," said a voice from the table. It belonged to Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head of the Xenological Institute, the organization dedicated to studying alien species and their technologies. She was old, older than anyone in the room, her life extended by medical technology that had been developed specifically to keep her expertise available as long as possible. "The Zithrani are not like us," Dr. Vasquez continued. "They do not think in years or decades. They think in millennia. To them, 6,000 years is not a long time. It is a growing season. They seeded us, like they seeded dozens of other species before us, and they went away to harvest other worlds. They expected to return and find us exactly as they left us, primitive, afraid, helpless. They did not expect us to develop. They did not expect us to remember. And yet we did remember," Amara said. "Every culture on Earth has stories of beings from the sky. The gods of ancient Sumeria, the devas of India, the angels and demons of the Abrahamic religions, the feathered serpents of Mesoamerica. All of them describe the same thing. Powerful beings who came from above, who took humans away, who could not be resisted. Our ancestors did not know what they were seeing. They thought they were witnessing divine power. But they remembered. They wrote it down. They passed the stories from generation to generation." She walked to the holographic display and touched a control. The image changed to show a cave painting, ancient, faded, but still recognizable. It depicted a creature with 4 eyes standing beside a disc-shaped object. Human figures cowered beneath it. "This painting is 12,000 years old," Amara said. "It was found in a cave in southern France. The Zithrani visited Earth multiple times before they left us to grow. They took samples. They tested us. They decided we were suitable for their purposes, and our ancestors watched and remembered. and drew what they saw on the walls of caves. The image changed again, showing a document. It was written in an ancient script. The letters faded but still legible. This is the Tablet of Marduk, found in the ruins of Babylon. It dates to approximately 1800 BCE. It describes a prophecy. The sky gods will return when humanity has grown fat and numerous. They will come to take what is theirs. But if the children of earth remember, if they prepare, if they fight, then the harvest can be stopped. Amara looked around the room. Every eye was on her. Every face was grim with understanding. Our ancestors knew, she said. They did not have the science to understand what they were seeing. They did not have the technology to resist. But they knew that something was out there, something that would return someday. And they tried to warn us. They did everything they could to make sure we would remember. General Thompson took over the presentation. When humanity developed faster than light travel 312 years ago, one of our first missions was to find evidence of the Zythrani. We hoped we were wrong. We hoped the old stories were just myths. But when we found those ruins on Proxima Centauri IV, we knew the truth. The monsters were real. The harvesters were real. And they were coming back. So we prepared, said Admiral Chen, speaking via holographic link from his flagship. Every military advance, every new weapon, every defensive installation, all of it was designed with one purpose in mind. When the Zythrani returned, we would be ready. The hologram showed a timeline. It began 3 centuries ago and extended to the present day. We developed adaptive shielding specifically to counter Zythrani energy weapons, Chen explained. We studied the ruins they left behind and reverse-engineered what we could. We built orbital defense platforms based on designs we found on a dead world in the Tau Ceti system. We created new forms of propulsion, new types of armor, new weapons that could pierce Zythrani hulls. And we kept it secret, Amara added. The public knew we had enemies among the stars. They knew the general threat. But the specifics, the scale of our preparations, the extent of our knowledge that was classified, we could not risk the information getting out. We could not risk the Zythrani learning how ready we were. Dr. Vasquez spoke again. There is another factor that works in our favor. The Zythrani are old. Their civilization has existed for 50,000 years. In all that time, they have never faced a serious challenge. They are complacent. They are arrogant. They assume that no prey species could ever threaten them, because no prey species ever has. Until now, said the representative from the Mars Collective. Until now, Amara agreed. The battle at Kepler 442b proved that we can defeat them. But we must be careful. The fleet that attacked us was a harvesting expedition, not a full military force. When the Zythrani realize what they are facing, they will send more ships, bigger ships, better commanders. This war is just beginning. The hologram changed one final time. It showed a map of the galaxy, with human space marked in blue, and estimated Zythrani territory marked in red. The red area was enormous, thousands of star systems, uncountable worlds. The Zythrani collective spans a significant portion of the galaxy, General Thompson said. They have more ships than we can count, more soldiers than we can imagine. In a straight fight, fleet against fleet, they would overwhelm us eventually. We cannot win through force alone. Then how do we win? Asked the representative from the Belt Federation. Amara smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had spent years planning for this exact moment. We do not fight them on their terms, she said. The Zythrani are used to harvesting prey species. They expect us to cower. They expect us to run. They expect us to break when the pressure becomes too great. So we do the opposite. We attack. We take risks they would never take. We fight in ways they cannot predict or understand. She brought up a new display showing military tactics and strategies. Human soldiers are different from any enemy the Zythrani have ever faced. We do not retreat when the battle turns against us. We dig in. We counterattack. We use guerrilla tactics, sabotage, psychological warfare. We make every planet they try to take cost them dearly. We make every victory they achieve feel like a defeat. Admiral Chen nodded. Our pilots are trained to ram enemy ships if their weapons fail. Our ground forces are trained to fight until the last soldier falls. Our civilians are trained to resist occupation through any means necessary. The Zythrani expect us to value our lives above all else. They do not understand that there are things we value more. Like what? asked a young representative who had not spoken before. Revenge, Amara said simply. For 6,000 years, we have carried the fear of the harvesters in our blood. Our children have nightmares about things in the sky. Our cultures are built on stories of abduction and terror. The Zithrani created us to be livestock. They designed us to be afraid. But they made a mistake. They gave us too much time. And fear, given enough time, becomes something else entirely. Anger, General Thompson said. Hatred, Dr. Vasquez added. Determination, Admiral Chen finished. Amara looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every leader present. The Zithrani thought they were coming to harvest a docile population. They thought they were going to collect livestock. Instead, they are going to face a species that has been preparing for them for 6,000 years. A species that knows exactly what they are and what they do. A species that has decided, collectively and unanimously, that it would rather die fighting than submit to slavery. She paused, letting her words sink in. This war will be long. It will be bloody. Many of us will not survive to see its end. But I promise you this, we will not lose. We cannot lose. Because losing means extinction not just for us, but for every species the Zithrani would harvest after us. We are fighting for more than ourselves. We are fighting for every intelligent race that might develop in this galaxy for the next 1,000,000 years. The room was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the representative from the outer colonies began to clap. Others joined him. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Amara raised her hand for silence. Enough celebration. We have work to do. The Zithrani will send reinforcements. We need to be ready. Admiral Chen, you have operational command of all military forces. General Thompson, you will coordinate ground defenses. Dr. Vasquez, I want your team analyzing every piece of Zithrani technology we can capture. We need to understand their weaknesses. And you, Madam Secretary? Admiral Chen asked. Amara's expression hardened. I will be doing something I have waited my entire life to do. I will be sending a message to the Zithrani High Command. I want them to know exactly who they are dealing with. I want them to understand that we are not livestock. We are not prey. We are the species that survived. We are the species that remembered. And we are the species that is going to destroy them. She turned to face the screens, looking at the tactical display of enemy positions. They created us to be food, she said softly. They are about to learn what happens when the food fights back. Far away, across the vast emptiness of space, the Zithrani High Command was receiving reports from the Earth expedition. They were reading about impossible battles, about prey that refused to die, about a species that had somehow transformed itself from livestock into something dangerous. The collective had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. They had never faced a real challenge. They had never imagined that one of their own creations could threaten them. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. And in the darkness between stars, human ships were already moving. Attack forces, sabotage teams, scouts probing enemy territory. The war was spreading beyond the solar system, beyond the boundaries that the Zithrani thought defined human space. Humanity was not content to defend its own worlds. Humanity was going on the offensive. The hunters were about to discover what it felt like to be hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The reinforcements arrived 6 months after the first battle. Admiral Veltorak had requested additional ships. The Zithrani High Command had sent everything. 4,000 warships emerged from fold space beyond the orbit of Neptune. It was the largest military force the collective had ever assembled in a single location. Harvester ships, each one capable of carrying 100,000 captives. Destroyer vessels designed to break planetary defenses. Command carriers that could coordinate entire fleets. And at the center of the formation, the Eternal Dominion, the flagship of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Veltorak stood on his bridge, watching the massive fleet take shape around him. He had spent 6 months studying reports from the initial engagement. He had analyzed every recording, every tactical assessment, every account from the survivors of the Kepler 442b massacre. He understood now what he was facing. The humans were different. They were dangerous. They would not surrender, but it did not matter. The collective had 4,000 ships. The humans, according to the latest intelligence, had perhaps 600. The numbers were impossible to overcome. Victory was certain. All ships report ready, Admiral, Kethra announced. The fleet awaits your command. Veltorak nodded slowly. Target: Earth, the human homeworld. We will burn it from orbit. We will destroy every city, every installation, every sign of their civilization, and then we will move to their colonies and do the same. By the time we are finished, there will be no humans left in the universe. It was not the original plan. The original plan had been to harvest the humans, to add their genetic material to the collective's food supply. But that was no longer possible. The humans had proven themselves too dangerous to keep alive. They were like a virus that had to be eliminated before it could spread. Move the fleet into attack formation, Veltorak ordered. We end this today. The massive Zithrani armada began to move toward the inner solar system. It was an impressive sight, thousands of ships moving in perfect coordination, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant sun. Nothing in the galaxy could stand against such a force. Nothing except humanity. The first warning came when the fleet passed the orbit of Jupiter. Sensors detected movement in the asteroid belt, dozens of small contacts, approaching at high speed. Human ships, the tactical officer reported. Attack craft. They are on an intercept course. Veltorak felt a chill run down his spine. Dozens of ships against 4,000. It was suicide. It was pointless. It was exactly what he had expected. Destroy them, he ordered. The front ranks of the Zithrani fleet opened fire. Space lit up with energy beams and missile salvos. The human ships were caught in a storm of destruction. They did not slow down. The first wave of human attack craft flew straight into the teeth of the Zithrani barrage. Some exploded instantly. Others took hit after hit, their hulls disintegrating piece by piece. But they kept coming. They kept firing. And they kept dying. One human ship, trailing smoke and fire from a dozen wounds, managed to reach a Zithrani destroyer. It crashed directly into the destroyer's engine section, its pilot choosing death over retreat. The explosion took both ships. Admiral, Kethra said, his voice tight with tension. They are not retreating. They are all going to die, and they are not retreating. I know, Veltorak replied. He had seen this before, at Kepler 442b. The humans did not fight like rational creatures. They fought like they had nothing to lose. They fought like they were already dead and simply had not accepted it yet. The first wave was destroyed within minutes. But before the Zithrani could celebrate, a second wave appeared. And then a third. And then a fourth. The humans were throwing everything they had at the invasion fleet. Small attack craft, larger frigates, mining ships converted into weapons platforms. None of them could survive against the Zithrani armada. All of them came anyway, and each wave took a toll. A destroyer crippled by a kamikaze strike. A carrier damaged by a missile that should not have been able to penetrate its shields. A harvester ship torn apart when a human pilot detonated his own reactor at point-blank range. By the time the Zithrani fleet reached the orbit of Mars, they had lost 200 ships. It was a tiny fraction of their total force. It was also more ships than the collective had lost in the past 1,000 years of operations combined. Mars was a fortress. The red planet had been transformed over centuries of terraforming and construction into a military stronghold. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Ground installations could fire into space, and somewhere in the dusty tunnels beneath the surface, millions of humans waited. Burn it, Veltorak ordered. Burn the entire planet. The Zithrani fleet opened fire. Energy beams struck the orbital platforms, destroying them one by one. Missiles rained down on the surface, creating craters visible from space. For hours, the bombardment continued, but the defenders did not stop fighting. From hidden bunkers, human weapons returned fire. Ship after ship in the Zithrani fleet was damaged or destroyed. The orbital platforms, even as they died, continued shooting until their reactors exploded. Ground forces emerged from underground shelters to fire surface to space missiles before being killed by the bombardment. And when the Zithrani finally landed troops to secure the planet, the real horror began. The humans on Mars did not surrender. They ambushed Zithrani patrols in the red dust. They set traps in abandoned buildings. They collapsed tunnels on top of enemy soldiers. They fought with weapons, with explosives, with their bare hands. Commander, a ground forces officer reported, his voice shaking. We have taken the primary city, but the resistance continues. They are fighting from every building, every street, every room. We are taking casualties in the thousands. Veltorak listened to the report in silence. This was not how war was supposed to work. When you bombarded a planet from orbit, the survivors were supposed to surrender. When you landed overwhelming forces, the defenders were supposed to give up. That was the rational response. That was what every other species in the galaxy had done. The humans were not rational. Pull back the ground forces, Veltorak finally ordered. We will reduce the planet to rubble from space. There will be nothing left for them to defend. The bombardment of Mars continued for 3 days. By the end, the surface was scarred with craters. The cities were gone. The orbital platforms were debris. According to all tactical models, no living thing should have survived. But when the Zithrani sent drones to confirm the destruction, they found humans still fighting. Soldiers who had hidden in deep bunkers, civilians who had taken up arms, survivors who emerged from the ashes to fire one last shot at the invaders before dying. The Zithrani had killed millions, but they had not broken the human spirit. The fleet moved on toward Earth. Earth was defended by everything humanity had left. 300 warships formed a wall between the Zithrani and their homeworld. Orbital platforms encircled the planet like a crown of thorns. On the surface, 8 billion people waited. Some of them were afraid. All of them were ready. Admiral Chenwei stood on the bridge of the Unconquered, watching the Zithrani armada approach. His fleet was outnumbered nearly 8-1. His ships were smaller, less powerful, less numerous. Every tactical calculation said he would lose. He smiled. Open a channel to all ships, he ordered. I want everyone to hear this. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, Admiral. Chen took a deep breath. This is Admiral Chenwei. The enemy is approaching Earth. They believe this will be an easy victory. They believe we will break. They believe we will run. He paused. They are wrong. Across the human fleet, soldiers and sailors listened to their commander's voice. For 6,000 years, we have lived in the shadow of fear. Fear of the sky. Fear of the darkness. Fear of the things that came in the night and took our ancestors away. Today, that fear ends. Today, we stand and face the monsters. Today, we show them what humanity has become. Chen looked out at the stars, at the distant lights of the Zithrani fleet. Some of us will not survive this battle. That is the price of freedom. But I promise you this. Every one of us who falls will take 100 of them with us. Every ship we lose will cost them dearly. And when this is over, when the last Zithrani ship is burning in the void, the galaxy will know that humanity cannot be conquered, cannot be harvested, cannot be destroyed. He raised his fist. For Earth, for humanity, for every ancestor they stole from us. No retreat, no surrender. Today, we make them pay. The human fleet roared in response. On every ship, soldiers shouted their defiance. On Earth, billions of people watched the broadcast and added their voices to the cry. And then the battle began. The Battle of Sol was the bloodiest engagement in galactic history. For 72 hours, humanity and the Zithrani fought without pause. Ships died by the hundreds. Debris filled the space around Earth until navigation became nearly impossible. The Zithrani had more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. But the humans had something the Zithrani could not understand. They had desperation. They had rage. They had 6,000 years of accumulated fury finally given an outlet. Human pilots flew suicide missions into the heart of the enemy fleet. Human gunners kept firing even as their ships burned around them. Human soldiers boarded Zithrani vessels and fought hand-to-hand in the corridors, killing and dying in the darkness between the stars. Veltorak watched his fleet being torn apart and felt something he had never felt before. Terror. They will not stop, Kethra said, his voice hollow. We have killed thousands of them, tens of thousands, and they will not stop. They are insane. Veltorak replied. No, Admiral. They are something worse. They are motivated. On the second day of the battle, a human frigate, its engines destroyed, its weapons depleted, its crew reduced to a single pilot, made a final burn toward the Eternal Dominion. The pilot's name was Lieutenant Sarah Park. She was 26 years old. She had known, when she volunteered for this mission, that she would not survive. She did not care. Her ship screamed through the Zithrani formation, dodging fire by instinct alone. She could see the massive bulk of the enemy flagship growing larger in her viewport. She could see the weapons tracking her, trying to lock on. She activated her communication system. She wanted the Zithrani to hear her final words. This is Lieutenant Park of the Terran Defense Force. I am about to crash my ship into your bridge. I thought you should know why." She was still smiling as she spoke. "You came to our world 6,000 years ago. You took our people. You treated us like animals. And then you went away, thinking you could come back whenever you wanted and take more. You were wrong. We remembered. We prepared. And now we are going to destroy you." Her ship was seconds from impact. The Zithrani gunners fired everything they had. They hit her vessel. They tore pieces off it. They set it on fire. It kept coming. "Tell your masters," Lieutenant Park said. "Tell everyone in your pathetic collective. Humanity sends its regards." Her ship struck the Eternal Dominion's bridge at full speed. The explosion killed Admiral Veltarak. It killed Kethra. It killed everyone on the command deck. And it sent a message to every Zithrani in the system. The humans would not stop. The humans would never stop. The humans would die. Every last one of them if necessary. But they would not surrender. On the third day, the Zithrani fleet retreated. They had come with 4,000 ships. They left with 800. They had expected to conquer a primitive species. They had found something else entirely. As the survivors fled toward the outer system, they broadcast a message back to the collective homeworld. It was the first such message in the 50,000-year history of the Zithrani Empire. It was a request for a ceasefire. And on Earth, bruised and battered and bleeding but still standing, humanity celebrated. They had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that had never been defeated, they had won. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo stood in the ruins of New Geneva, looking up at a sky still filled with debris from the battle. Around her, people were digging out survivors, treating the wounded, mourning the dead. The cost had been enormous. Millions of casualties. Hundreds of ships destroyed. Mars was a wasteland. The outer colonies were in ruins, but humanity was still here. Humanity was still fighting. And the Zithrani were running. "Madam Secretary," an aide said, approaching carefully. "We have received a message from the Zithrani fleet. They are requesting terms for a ceasefire." Amara did not respond immediately. She was thinking about Lieutenant Park, about Admiral Chen, who had died when the Unconquered was destroyed, about the countless others who had given their lives in the battle. "Tell them," she finally said, "that we will discuss terms, but make sure they understand one thing." "What is that, Madam Secretary?" Amara turned to face her aide. Her eyes were cold. Her voice was steady. "This is not over. We are not going to stop until the collective is destroyed. Tell them that every day they delay, every day they refuse to surrender completely, more of their ships will die. More of their soldiers will die. We have been waiting 6,000 years for this moment. We are not going to waste it." The aide swallowed nervously. "Yes, Madam Secretary." As he hurried away to deliver the message, Amara looked up at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the Zithrani fleet were licking their wounds. Somewhere out there, the High Command was receiving reports about the impossible defeat. She hoped they were afraid. She hoped they understood what they had unleashed, because humanity was just getting started, and the next phase of the war would make the Battle of Seoul look like a minor skirmish. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was very, very good at hunting. The Zithrani High Senate had not convened an emergency session in 3,000 years. There had been no need. The collective was eternal. The collective was supreme. Nothing in the galaxy could threaten their dominance, until now. The Great Chamber was filled with the most powerful beings in the Zithrani Empire. Senators who controlled entire star systems. Admirals who commanded fleets of thousands. The High Arbiter himself, the oldest living Zithrani, who had personally overseen the harvest of 100 species, and standing before them all, a single human. Ambassador Chen Wei was the nephew of the admiral who had died defending Earth. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple black uniform with no decorations except a small pin on his collar, the symbol of the United Terran Council. He was not afraid. The High Arbiter spoke first. His voice was ancient and cold, like wind blowing through an empty tomb. "You stand in the heart of the collective. No member of a prey species has ever set foot in this chamber. Do you understand the significance of this moment?" Chen nodded. "I do. You have invited me here because you are afraid. You have suffered defeats that you cannot explain. Your fleet at Seoul was destroyed. Your commanders are dead. And for the first time in 50,000 years, you do not know what to do next. A murmur ran through the Senate chamber. Several senators made sounds of outrage, but the High Arbiter raised a clawed hand for silence. "You are bold," he said. "I will grant you that, but boldness alone will not save your species. The collective spans thousands of star systems. We have billions of soldiers, tens of thousands of warships. What you faced at Sol was a harvesting expedition, not a true military force. If we commit our full strength against your people, you will be annihilated." Chen smiled. It was a thin, dangerous smile. "Then why haven't you?" The chamber fell silent. "It has been 6 months since the Battle of Sol," Chen continued. 6 months since your fleet retreated. In that time, we have fortified our colonies. We have built new ships. We have expanded our military, and we have begun operations in collective space." He touched a control on his wrist, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of the galaxy, with Zythrani territory marked in red. 3 weeks ago, a Terran strike force destroyed a collective supply depot in the Vega system. 2 weeks ago, we attacked a shipyard in the Altair sector. Last week, we freed 40,000 captives from a harvesting station near Deneb. Chen paused. "Your people call them food. We call them survivors, and we are going to free every single one of them." The High Arbiter's 4 eyes narrowed. "These are minor annoyances, raids by desperate refugees. They prove nothing, do they?" Chen touched another control. The holographic display changed, showing fleet movements. "This is the current position of the collective 7th Fleet, which was supposed to be guarding your border with the Orion territories. As you can see, they have been redeployed to hunt our raiding parties. And this is the position of your 3rd Fleet, which was supposed to be patrolling the core systems. They have been sent to reinforce the Altair sector." He looked at the High Arbiter. "You are stretched thin. You are responding to threats that appear and disappear before you can catch them. And every ship you redeploy is a ship that is not defending something else." Chen smiled again. "We are not trying to defeat you in one great battle. We are going to bleed you slowly. We are going to make you so afraid, so paranoid, so desperate, that you will eventually destroy yourselves." The Senate chamber erupted in noise. Senators shouted. Admirals pounded the tables. The High Arbiter himself rose from his throne, his ancient body trembling with rage. "You dare threaten us? You are a prey species. You exist because we allowed you to exist." Chen did not flinch. He stood in the center of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, surrounded by beings who wanted him dead, and he did not flinch. "That is exactly the problem," he said. "You keep saying that. You keep believing it. But you are wrong. We are not prey. We never were. You made a mistake when you seeded our world 6,000 years ago. You thought you were creating livestock. Instead, you created your own destroyers." He took a step forward. The guards around the chamber moved, but the High Arbiter waved them back. "Let me tell you a story," Chen said. "A story about my species. 6,000 years ago, your ancestors came to our world. They took our people. They treated us like animals. And then they left, assuming we would still be waiting when they returned. But we did not wait. We did not forget. We remembered every story, every nightmare, every terror passed down through generations. And we prepared." He gestured at the holographic display. "Every advancement in human technology was driven by fear of your return. Every military doctrine, every weapon system, every defensive installation, all of it was designed with one purpose: to defeat you. We did not know when you would come back. We did not know how powerful you would be. But we knew you were out there. And we spent 6,000 years getting ready." The chamber was silent now. Even the most aggressive senators were listening. "You asked why we are not afraid," Chen continued. "You asked why we fought so hard at Sol. Why our people die laughing. Why we refuse to surrender no matter the cost. The answer is simple: fear. We have been afraid for 6,000 years. We have lived with fear so long that it has become part of us. It has changed us. It has made us into something that you cannot understand." Well, he looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every senator and admiral. "We are not afraid of death. We are afraid of what you represent. We are afraid of being cattle again. We are afraid of seeing our children taken, our worlds harvested, our species erased from history like so many before us. And that fear is stronger than anything you can threaten us with. That fear will make us fight until the last human is dead. That fear will make us destroy ourselves rather than submit to you." The High Arbiter sat back in his throne. For the first time, he looked his age. He looked tired. "What do you want?" he asked. "Surrender," Chen said simply. "Complete and unconditional. You will release all captive species currently held in collective stasis facilities. You will cede all territory within 500 light-years of Earth. You will disarm your military fleets and submit to inspection by Terran forces. And you will acknowledge, publicly and forever, that humanity is not livestock, that we are a sovereign species with rights equal to any in the galaxy." The demands hung in the air. Every being in the chamber knew what they meant. The collective had never surrendered. The collective had never acknowledged any species as an equal. The collective had never done anything except take what it wanted and destroy what it did not. "And if we refuse?" the High Arbiter asked. Chen's expression did not change. "Then we continue fighting. We attack your supply lines. We raid your colonies. We free your captives and arm them against you. We turn every species you have ever harvested into allies against you. And in 100 years, or 1,000 years, or 10,000 years, we will finally reach this chamber, and we will burn it to the ground." He paused. "You said the collective is eternal. You are wrong. Everything ends. Everything dies. Even empires that have lasted 50,000 years. The only question is, how much blood you want to spill before you accept the inevitable." The High Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Around him, the senators and admirals waited for his response. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. Finally, slowly, the ancient Zithrani nodded. "We will discuss your terms." 3 months later, the Treaty of Sol was signed. The Zithrani collective surrendered. They released their captives. They withdrew from human space. They acknowledged humanity as a sovereign power. It was the greatest victory in human history. But Secretary General Amara Okonkwo knew it was not the end. Standing in the rebuilt council chambers in New Geneva, she watched the celebrations outside with tired eyes. The war was over. The enemy was defeated. Humanity had survived. And yet, she could not rest. "The Zithrani are not the only threat," she said to her advisors. "There are other predator species out there, other empires that might see us as prey. We cannot become complacent. We cannot assume that we are safe." Admiral Marcus Webb, who had replaced Chen Wei as head of the Terran fleet, nodded in agreement. "We have already begun analyzing the Zithrani databases we captured. There are references to at least 3 other major powers in the galaxy. 2 of them have had conflicts with the collective in the past. The third is unknown." "Then we prepare," Amara said. "We learn everything we can about these powers. We build more ships. We develop new weapons. We make alliances with the species we freed from the collective. And we make sure that no one, ever again, thinks of humanity as livestock." She turned to face the window. Outside, millions of people celebrated their victory. They cheered. They wept. They embraced each other in the streets. They did not know that their leaders were already planning for the next war. They did not know that the galaxy was vast and full of dangers. They did not know that humanity's struggle for survival was just beginning. But Amara knew. She had always known. In the archives beneath the council chambers, a new file was created. It was classified at the highest level, accessible only to a handful of people. It contained everything humanity knew about the other major powers in the galaxy, their territories, their capabilities, their potential as threats or allies. The file was labeled simply, "Future Concerns," and at the bottom of the first page, someone had written a note. "Humanity will never again be caught unprepared. We will never again be prey. We will watch. We will learn. We will prepare. And if anything in this galaxy ever threatens us again, we will be ready." It was signed by every member of the Terran Council. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to change. Other species long harvested, long enslaved, long forgotten learned what humanity had done. They heard about the tiny prey species that had defeated the mighty collective. They heard about the battles, the sacrifices, the refusal to surrender, and they began to hope. Ambassadors from a dozen worlds arrived at Earth, seeking alliances. Species that had been enemies of the collective for millennia reached out to humanity, offering technology, resources, and friendship. The galaxy was reshaping itself around a new power, a power that had done the impossible. Humanity had been created as livestock. Humanity had been designed to be food, and humanity had risen up and destroyed its creators. The message was clear. If humanity could do it, anyone could. The age of the collective was over. The age of humanity had begun. In a small park in New Geneva, a young girl sat on a bench, looking up at the stars. She was 6 years old, born during the war. Too young to remember the terror and the violence. She only knew that the sky was safe now. She only knew that the monsters had been defeated. Her grandmother sat beside her, an old woman with gray hair and weathered hands. She had lived through the war. She had lost friends, family, loved ones. She had watched the Battle of Seoul from a shelter beneath the city, listening to the explosions above and wondering if each one would be the last. "Grandma," the girl said, "why did they attack us?" The old woman was quiet for a moment. Then she put her arm around her granddaughter and pulled her close. "Because they thought we were weak," she said. "They thought we were afraid. They thought they could take whatever they wanted from us. Were they wrong?" The old woman smiled. It was a sad smile, but also a proud one. "They were wrong about everything. We are not weak. We are not afraid. And we do not give up. Ever." She pointed at the stars. "See those lights up there? Some of them are our ships. Some of them are new colonies. Some of them are places we have never been but will explore someday. We almost lost all of that. But we fought for it. We died for it. And we kept it." The girl looked at the stars with wonder in her eyes. "Will the bad aliens ever come back?" "Maybe," the old woman admitted. "There are many things in the universe, and not all of them are friendly. But if they do come back, we will be ready. We will always be ready. That is what it means to be human." The girl nodded, satisfied with this answer. She did not fully understand what her grandmother meant. She was too young to grasp the weight of history, the sacrifice of millions, the transformation of an entire species from prey to predator. But she would learn. In time, all human children would learn. They would learn the history of their people. They would learn about the Zithrani and the harvest and the 6,000 years of preparation. They would learn about the war and the heroes who fought it. And they would learn the most important lesson of all. Never again. Humanity would never again be caught unprepared. Humanity would never again be underestimated. Humanity would never again bow to any power in the galaxy, because humanity had learned what it was capable of, and the universe had learned to be afraid. In the deepest archives of the Terran Council, preserved for future generations, was a simple plaque. It listed no names, no dates, no specific achievements. It contained only a single sentence, voted on unanimously by the survivors of the war and engraved in metal that would last for 10,000 years. The sentence read, "They called us livestock. They forgot that livestock can stampede." Below it, someone had added a handwritten note, faded, but still legible, "And now the galaxy knows what happens when we do." The war was over. The threat was ended. Humanity had won its right to exist. But in the hearts of every human being, from the oldest veteran to the youngest child, a flame burned. A flame that had been lit 6,000 years ago, when their ancestors first looked up at the sky and felt fear. A flame that had grown with each generation, each memory, each whispered warning passed down through the ages. That flame was no longer fear. That flame was pride. Humanity had faced the worst the galaxy could offer, and humanity had triumphed. Now, as they rebuilt their worlds and expanded their borders and reached out to the stars, they carried that flame with them. They carried the memory of what they had overcome, and they carried a promise to every generation that would follow. We survived. We fought. We won. And we will never, ever, let it happen again. The stars waited, vast and infinite and full of wonders. Some of those wonders were beautiful. Some of them were dangerous, but humanity was no longer afraid of the dark. Humanity was the thing the dark should be afraid of. And from this day forward, the galaxy would remember that forever.